You're listening to Sarah Hagan Backstage, with interviews and insights from years inside the music industry. Join Sarah as she talks with masters of their crafts, finding out what makes them tick both inside and outside of the music business. This week, Sarah talks with Soan.
Our guest today is known for being a highly in-demand studio musician, as well as a touring drummer. Soan has played on an incredible amount of #1 records in every genre of music, is an in-demand clinician, and has created a really great social media following as well. Today, we're going to talk to Ash about his signature sound and recording studio, his experiences over the years, and we will hear some fun stories from the many he has amassed in his travels. Stay tuned for an inside look at the life and career of Soan. Soan, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
How are you?
Pretty good, yeah. It's obviously winter over here. It's dark. Doesn't look it really in that over there, but it is. It's getting really dark, and it's only like 4 p.m. But other than that, everything's all right. Thanks. We're hanging in there. London is in a bit of a strange place with the pandemic and stuff at the moment, but everyone's still hanging in there.
Good. That's good. I think that's all we can do.
Yeah.
It's great to have you here today, though. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for asking me.
Absolutely. I feel like we have so much to talk about today. And just off of our conversations that we've had over the years, I know that you have so many stories and so many experiences, and we're all lucky to be able to hear you talk about them. So we wanted to talk a little bit about, how you started your journey in music. Can you talk a little bit about, coming up, starting playing, and how old you were and all of that?
Yeah, I mean, my dad, I lost my dad a few months ago, sadly.
Sorry.
Yeah, not through COVID, but but he basically played me a record, a track called "Let There Be Drums" by a guy called Sandy Nelson. I was 10 years old, and it was a record. It was no cassette or anything back then.
Mm-hmm.
Showing my age. He played me this track, and I'd never heard anything quite like it, really. The sound, if you listen that track, people can check it out. "Let There Be Drums" by Sandy Nelson, and it's like a sort of surf. It's kind of like surf music, so it's a predominantly electric guitar and this really sort of Gene Krupa-y tom drum beat, but I'd never heard anything like it up until that point. This would be 1980.
Wow.
So the music that was around at the time was nowhere near like this 60s sounding track, but just the sound of the drums, Summit, took hold with me, and I bugged my mum and dad then, to get a drum kit, like lots of sort of youngsters do, and they kind of, in fairness to them, they let me. They wanted to see if I would still be into it in a week's time, in a month's time, mm-hmm. in 6 months' time, and basically I was. So a whole year went by, and I was still bugging them for to get the drums. And a friend of mine at school, her brother had a drum kit, and he was a teenager, so I would have been 10, he would have been about 16, 17, so quite a lot older, and he had a kit, and I used to go around to their house to see my friend, but essentially I wanted to just pick this guy's brains about his drums. And I bugged my mum and dad, bugged them. And eventually for my 11th birthday, they bought me a drum kit. And then that was it. The whole thing started. My music teacher at school, he basically was a piano player, jazz piano player. Mm-hmm. And so when I was 11, I was in a little trio with him and another student that played upright bass. And that was my sort of first real experience of actually, wow, this could this could be like a career. This could, because I started earning some money, we would do little dinner dances and stuff with my music teacher. My dad would drive me to the gig, would be the roadie and drive me with the drums and stay there and then pat the drums down at the end. But I would get about £20.
Wow.
Which back in 1981 was quite a lot of money. You know, it was kind of, I remember at the time my dad saying, you know, some of my friends were doing a paper round and they were earning that sort of money after in like a month, you know.
Right.
And I was getting it just for having some fun, basically playing the drums. So it was like the first little spark of like, wow, this, if you get good, then it could turn into a whole life of experience and being able to support yourself, hopefully, etc. And yeah, so that was the spark, really. Dad played me that record, you know.
I love that. And you mentioned the word spark, and just your story really kind of reminded me of the Disney movie Soul. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
Watched it. Was it last night or the night before? Yeah.
Yeah, I you know, exactly what you just said is it just reminded me of the movie with the spark and the, you know, the piano player and playing the drums. And I just think it's so interesting that, you know, so many of the people that we know in the industry have posted about that movie and how it just hit a note inside about the experience of discovering music and discovering your passion for it and your love for it, and just how that it does happen like that. Suddenly you realize this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah, and for me also, you know, we were talking earlier about school, you know, homeschooling now, and I've got children myself. And interestingly, with my kids now, it's I can put myself in my parents' position at the time, and it's pretty amazing. They bought me a drum kit and let me set it a full loud thing in my bedroom and just let me play. Yeah, and I guess I'll do that for my kids, although they could come here. But it's quite a big deal, that, you know, just the noise, the commitment to driving me around. You know, God rest my dad, and for doing that, being in that position. And you know, it's interesting, you know, being a dad now and looking at that and the way that happened. Also, you know, for me, the reason I call it a spark in a way is because I didn't do particularly well at school, and you know, academically, I found it a challenge, like quite a lot of musicians, arty, creative people, whatever you want to call us, do. You know, we kind of, and back then, you know, now if you're creative, that's as important, I think, in school, and they recognize that as being as important as, you know, academic side. Whereas, you know, end of the 70s, really, it's like, no, music, you know, you've got to do a real job. And that is still around now, but less so. And I think my parents recognized that spark in me regarding music. And I'll thank them forever for it, because here I am in my little den, you know, with the things that have happened in my life. I'm 51 years old now. It's been a while.
That's pretty amazing. And, you know, so thankful to the parents who really recognize that in children and foster it and encourage it. And you're right. I mean, drums is expensive and it takes up a lot of space, and it's loud, and it you know, requires a lot of commitment, right? So but I think it's one of those things where you know, you find something that you're passionate about. You have to be passionate about drumming, because it does take a lot to make it, you know, to become Ash Soan. It took a lot of time and effort on your part and commitment to it. And so I think when you're passionate about something like that, that's what it takes to actually make it happen. So that's amazing. And now look where you are. I want to talk about your space here, because this is fantastic. And the videos that you post on Instagram are amazing. just looking at your studio, and it's the Windmill Studios, right? That's what it's called.
It's the bottom of a windmill. And I mean, not very inspired. Calling it the Windmill Studio. So yeah, that picture that's on the screen there, the bottom picture is what was here, and obviously that bit at the top is where I am. And we built in the base, if you can see that. So it's the same. That some of the brick is the same. Yeah, and you can see in that picture at the bottom, there's some guys just at the bottom there.
Oh yeah, look at that.
And up the steps, you see that sort of entrance, which is halfway up the wooden structure.
Mm-hmm.
There's somebody sat on the steps there as well. And those people would have lived in my house that I live in now.
That is amazing. So what we're looking at is like the bottom is the structure that you're in now, and then it has this windmill built on top of it.
Which
wooden.
Sadly now gone, because it was all wood. And that picture was taken in about 1860. That
is incredible.
Yeah.
What did it look like when you purchased the property? Was it like that?
No. So you can see behind me. Where are we? Yeah. So there's these brick buttresses. There's 4 of those, and they were just like. So when we bought it, it just looked like a ruin across the field. Just 4 buttresses, a little bit of wall left, not very much. And it looked like in the Victorian times, there's a thing called a folly. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. And a folly was like a Victorian thing. They would make something in their grounds which looked like a ruin and a point of interest. So when their friends came around, they could wander down to the folly, and it would be like a sort of talking point. That's what it looked like. It just looked like a ruin across the field. And I didn't really think much about it. It was like, well, that's where the windmill was. It was, the interesting thing is it was slowly the brick. So these brick buttresses, they're about 200 years old. Wow. And they were left open to the elements, obviously, for 100 or plus years. And it was just basically breaking down. The walls were slowly, breaking down with the weather and stuff. And the other part of the house, there's a lot that we have some barns attached to the house. And when we bought the house, the barns were what I was going to convert into the windmill. And then we looked into that financially. It's quite a commitment, quite a lot of money to do that. It's quite a big space. And just by chance, as always in life, a friend of my wife's, my mother-in-law's friend, who specializes in green builds, he just said, well, what about the mill? I was like, what do you mean? He said, well, we could make the walls out of straw bales. We could get some reclaimed wood for the floor and the roof. And that was it. Hey, presto, we started that journey, did some drawings, and it took about a year.
Wow.
And the straw bales have been the best thing ever, because firstly, it's sound, they're so thick, they're like 2 feet across or something. So the sound doesn't get out. But what it does acoustically, which is purely by accident, is it absorbs a lot of the bass. So the sound in here is very controlled inside the actual room.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I think that's partly why it sounds like it does, in here.
And it sounds incredible. I think, anyone who hears even just the clips posted on Instagram, the sound is incredible. And
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Oh, and there's a picture of the inside.
Yeah.
So great. It looks as great as it sounds, basically.
Yeah.
And how great that you have that space right now where everyone is at home and, recording from home and doing everything they can from their home studios. So it's fantastic.
Trust me, every single day I look up and go, thanks very much. It is, I know how lucky I am, and I'm very grateful that I've got this space, and so it's about 8 years old now. We're going, as in this Christmas, it would be 8 years. And I'm 51. So if you think about it, it takes a while, because I know a lot of people look at my place and go, "Man, how lucky are you? You've got that incredible space." But I'm older. You know, it's taken me a while to get to the stage where this sort of stuff happens.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It doesn't really happen overnight for normal people that earn a living, which is what I consider myself. You know,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been you know, a path for you to get
yeah,
to this point in your life for sure. We want to go back and talk about a lot of that stuff over the years, the things that you did. Of course, now there's no touring happening and the live gigs aren't happening, but you spent so many years doing so much of that. And I kind of want to go back to 1994 because I love the stories that you've told about playing at Woodstock
yeah,
94. And I remember, you know, the acts that played that event, for me as a young drummer at the time, just being so excited to see so many of my favorite musicians on stage and playing, and the whole thought of Woodstock and the history that's behind it and this kind of revival of that.
yeah.
So I love to talk to you about Woodstock and your experience there, and I would love for you to share some of that too.
Yeah, so Woodstock for me, that the band that I was with, and I still play with them, is a Scottish band called Delamitri. And at the time, in '95, actually, so '94 was the beginning of their sort of campaign in America, and that was they were signed to A&M, and that was part of the sort of push to get the band a foothold in America. And it worked, because about a year later they had a top 10 hit, and I think it's still their most successful song, a track called Roll to Me. But they finished the record, which was called Twisted, and there's a great drummer called Chris Sharrock that played on the record. He's a Liverpool drummer, and he now plays with Noel Gallagher.
Right.
And he's a fantastic drummer. He's like a sort of mix between Ringo Starr and Keith Moon, but he's really good with a click.
Yeah.
so you know, lots of producers and artists love drummers like that. So they've got a foot firmly in pop music and rock and roll and all those things, but they're also useful when you get them in the studio. Anyway, so he did the record, and he didn't want to tour because he was very, very busy. I got an audition, incredibly. I was very lucky when I moved to London. I met Pino Palladino, lived in my street, and
Wow.
And a few years later, Pino put me up for the audition for this band. He knew their manager, and he knew that they were looking for a young drummer to go on the road. So luckily I got the gig, and to where Woodstock came in, it was pretty quick. Woodstock was my 5th gig.
Wow.
We did a couple of gigs in Ireland, and a couple of gigs up in small parts on the sort of west coast of Scotland, in remote parts of Scotland. And then it was like, right, we're off to Los Angeles. And I was 24, never been to America, about to play Woodstock. I was just, up until that point, was pretty much just playing pubs and clubs in London as well. Just madness, you know, the change in everything, really. And we were rehearsing in Los Angeles at an old sparring gym of Muhammad Ali's.
Wow.
And we were in one room, and next door, the Chili Peppers were next door, rehearsing for Woodstock. The same.
Wow.
You know? And Chad, he had that really colourful kit. I think that Pearl did him. That one that looked like it's sort of been hand painted and sprayed. Dead funky, cool looking thing. Anyway.
Yes.
And we would get in the morning and rehearse all day long, and those guys would come in about sort of lunchtime, all on Harley Davidsons. And I remember thinking, this is insane. Like you know, just it's like dreamlike sort of scenario, really, for a young drummer. Like, you know, I was playing in little clubs and pubs in London, and then within a few weeks, I'm in Los Angeles, and Chad Smith's, I can hear him rehearsing next door.
Right.
One night they disappeared, and I went in, And I just sort of snuck into their room, and I thought, I'm gonna play his drums. So I sat and I picked the sticks up, played the drums, put the sticks down, didn't damage anything, and just had a little play of the kit. And then next morning, he came in and he goes, "You've been playing my fucking drums?" And I was like, no, I've not been playing them. He goes, "You sure?" And I'm like, "Actually, yeah, I did." He goes, "I knew it." And because basically he puts his sticks on the floor, Tom.
Okay.
Every single time when he's finished playing, I think it's the floor, Tom. It might be this. Anyway, it's either snare. I can't remember which one it was. I think it's floor. And I put the sticks down on the snare.
Oh no.
And he knew someone. He came in the morning like someone's been playing this drum kit, and they were put down respectfully in the right place. We knew like a drummer's been playing it, and I was the first, suspect on the list. And then years later, absolutely decades later, 20 odd years later, I'm in a hotel in Manchester. And Chad's there, and someone introduces to me, and I said, "Look, I don't expect you to remember, but I've met you before." He's like, "Oh, okay." I'm like looking like this now, not 24 years old. And he goes, where was it? I said, "It was in LA. I know I was rehearsing." And he went, "Sticks on the floor, Tom."
Oh.
I'm like, "Yeah. How'd you remember that?" He goes, "I already remembered."
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. Unbelievable. And just ridiculous that he remembered that. I think I must have mentioned the band to give him some sort of inkling of what happened. But yeah, he remembered that. What a dude, and
that's incredible.
Every now and again he comments on my stuff, on social media. But anyway, getting back to Woodstock and how was it? So we rehearsed, and then I remember the singer being very, very nervous indeed. It was the biggest gig I've ever done in my life.
That's a huge gig. Yeah.
I can't sort of emphasize enough that I was just playing in pubs, really. And then literally 2 weeks later or whatever, I'm doing that. And I remember the tour manager is a really dear friend of mine now. At the time, he's like a Liverpool guy, Scouser. Wind up merchant, always picking fun, thinking of something to trip you up. And he said to me just before we went on, I said to him, "How many people are here?" And he said, "Well, about 200,000. Wow. And he goes, "And Bob Clearmountain's doing the sound. No pressure." I remember thinking, because Bob Clearmountain, a very famous mix engineer, A&M were recording it. All the A&M artists were recorded, and so yeah, it was like my fifth gig, and it's been recorded by Bob Clearmountain, and it was a lot of pressure, but I really enjoyed the gig. There's some footage that I've got on YouTube that I found, but I just remember the singer really, really not enjoying it at all. And I remember thinking, this is what's interesting about bands. There's so many personalities and so much energy, negative and positive, going on all the time. So for him, he wanted a massive hole to open up so he could jump down it. And I'm at the same time going, this is unbelievable, looking out at endless amount of people.
That's amazing. I love that you were able to recognize the fact of how amazing the opportunity was and enjoy the moment, because I think that's a hard thing to do sometimes, if you have, you're nervous or whatever's going on that kind of gets in your head, and it makes you not be able to really kind of like live in that moment. But I love the fact that you did, and you have that super positive memory of looking out at the crowd. I remember that event, it rained a couple of days, right? But you guys didn't.
So we were Friday, I think, the Friday, which I think was an extra day or something like that. And there was mud down the front, because I remember seeing all those people just like splattered around, like insane. I mean, you know, very much like the original Woodstock, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the 94 one, it was eventually that they don't know how many people went, because the whole thing with the fences, they went down, and in the end they sort of gave up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was nuts. But yeah, what a thing. And then from then on, that was, like I say, that was the sort of beginning of Delamitri's sort of campaign into America. And then we toured, and we played and toured and did lots and lots and lots. And now I look back on it, and not many bands will do that. Not many British bands will do that in America, like 3 months, stop for a couple of weeks and then go again.
And they get back on it. Yeah. And you essentially spent years on the road.
Yeah, with them it was like, yeah, a couple of years, pretty much non-stop touring. Yeah, with them. And then I toured with another band, and it was like you mentioned earlier, that's how I earned my living as a young musician. Studio thing wasn't open for me at that point, you know.
And you mentioned the singer, and the issue with the nerves and everything.
He's over that now.
He's over that. Good.
Yeah, he's over it.
I tend to get nervous for other people. Like
yeah.
People that I really care about personally, when I see them play or perform or something like that, I get nervous for them. I think my heart races, and I don't know why. But.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because I feel that I like being around people on a live gig that are composed and kind of together, and aren't really, if they are nervous, they do very well of not showing it. And I think that is also something that you learn to do. You just learn to control that energy. And for me, I try and push it into a positive place every time. And so doing the voice for the amount of time I did, that is actually much more nerve-wracking than playing live.
I bet
TV is full on, because there's so many people looking at you and wanting you to play it exactly right. Whereas as a gig, you can sort of get away with a couple of things,
Right, absolutely.
Somebody.
I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
So somebody might notice it, but maybe they won't. But if you got free
broadcast, right? You're sending that out to so many people watching on TV, and the reruns and the clips online, and it kind of like lives on forever.
Yeah. Well, the bass player in the voice band, he's still doing it. Ben, his biggest nightmare was when we do the more involved sort of tracks, where they would, I think generally, if you play on the voice band, you're kind of in the back.
Mm-hmm.
You're there, and they recognize that there's a band playing, but really they don't make much of a deal of the band until it gets to the semi-final and stuff. And then they start bringing the drums down, and they start bringing the instruments down.
Mm-hmm.
And the bass player would always, his biggest thing, and it probably still is being called down to play the bass down the front and falling over a monitor or tripping over his lead, and it being on YouTube for the rest of his life. That's all he was worried about, which is incredible, because he's playing on hundreds of tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And the only sort of anxiety he's really got is because he knows if you fall over on a TV show, that is going to be living and lasting much longer than your greatest moment playing fretless bass on that ballad.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the pressure nowadays with social media is so high, because not only that the clip will live on forever and be reposted, but then you could become a meme. People. It's so nerve-wracking. I can imagine that.
And often those would be live. So like, if you did fall over, that's it.
Right. And the camera caught it. That was the end of that.
You can't get it back. Yeah.
And you were on The Voice for years, right?
I did 7 years. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And there you are. We have a picture of you on the stage. You're standing. The stage is behind you in that picture. right?
That's right. Yeah. So the band are looking out towards the coaches.
I love it. Did you ever sit in one of those chairs? I know you played Chad Smith's kit, but did you ever sit in the
Yeah, we was very unglamorously would have sort of lunch, sat
in the chair?
Yeah. We were rehearsing, cup of tea, sat in the chair.
I love it. That's so great. And how cool is it too to just have the opportunity to witness some new talent in that aspect too? I mean, you must have seen people come across that stage and just been blown away.
Definitely. We added it up. In my 7 years, there was I heard 1,000 singers.
Wow.
Yeah.
My goodness.
And it's interesting that there were some really great people. There's no question. It's in that whole way of how that came about. I don't really know. I think it's an interesting change in the way that talent has been found.
Mm-hmm.
But it works and it gives people a platform, and I guess it's got to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think about how things were measured back in the day. It's come in such a different direction. I mean, it was how many albums have you sold, that kind of thing. And now it's such a different way to kind of gauge someone's influence. How many followers do you have, and how many likes and comments, and it's a little bit of a different world, and it's come in that direction so quickly.
Yeah.
Right. So back to your days on the road.
Yeah.
I mean, the artists that you played with, just phenomenal artists, and the experience on the road. Is there ever an instance where you played with someone you felt even made you a better musician, or kind of influenced you in that way, or was really great to play with?
Yeah. Well, without sort of sounding soppy, everybody. I would get something from every single tour, and I always, being fortunate to meet Pino, and one of the messages that I got from him when I was a younger musician was, it's okay to play all different styles of music, because in England it's quite interesting. The sort of pop producers, if you remotely venture into jazz or funk or fusion, then you can't play in Blur or in some sort of mainstream British pop band. Mm-hmm. You're almost too good, and the things that you play won't be cool, because you're too good, if you understand that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
It's sort of like a reverse snobbery.
Right.
Because jazz musicians get accused of being snobs because people aren't good enough. And then, but certainly there are British musicians, British producers, that if you're too good, they don't really like you. It's, I don't know if that happens in America, but it's certainly, that is present in the UK. And I have to try my hardest still here, bringing energy to a recording that has got some sort of naivety to it sometimes. Because if you're too good and too smooth, people don't like it. We can program that.
I got it. Yeah, they want the feeling of live drumming, and that it's not perfection, right? So a little bit.
If you think of the extremes, like Keith Moon, for instance, everybody accuses Keith of not being very tight, time wise. Mm-hmm. But man, he brought energy to the band, and it's getting that right, getting the precision right, and getting the energy right. And in some respects, producers are right. They need, it's right to have that energy. But it's interesting that there is that attitude, and Pino anyway was the person really that said to me, it's cool. You can play for a Scottish rock band, but then you can play with a jazz fusion piano player. It's fine, because it's just music.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so thankful for that message, because over the years now I've played with lots of different people, you know, definitely different styles, and I love them all. That's the thing that used to frustrate me, with people being sort of slightly, oh, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Well, you know, because you're a British drummer, you shouldn't be playing West Coast jazz fusion. You can't do it. Like, why can't I do it?
Yes.
You know,
Of
why
course
can't I?
you can.
Why
And
can't
you
I?
do.
Yeah. Why can't I play reggae? Why can't I play Latin? Even though I'm English, my Latin feel obviously isn't going to feel like I'm from Cuba, but I still love the music. It's like, and Pino definitely instilled that in me, and I'm really thankful for that, because I've kept it through for 30 years, that thought. So my touring, getting back to the touring thing, I embraced playing with all sorts of different people, you know. So when I left Delamitri and joined a British band that was playing house music, a band called Faithless, and that was very, very different, you know, playing to sequences and you know, a whole different energy.
Mm-hmm.
I love that as well, you know.
And I think, you know, anyone looking at your discography can see the amazing array of styles. And also, I mean, I have to ask, what you have this amazing piece of data, and it's the number of #1 albums that you've played on, right? And I think I have to tell this story because I introduced you at PASIC a couple
Oh
years
yeah,
ago, right? Um, and I usually, before I introduce someone, you know, I'll write up a few notes and then talk with the drummer and just make sure that it's, you know, all accurate and it fits with what's current. And when I went to talk to you, I said, okay, I have this statistic, and it's, you know, you've played on this many #1 albums. And it was funny because just in the time that had been written and the time that you were performing, you're like, actually, it's now this number. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, like, this is amazing.
it changed the other day. You know, it's interesting, isn't it? You know, but to be fair, I'm a drop in the ocean compared to people like Steve Gadd, and some of the guys that have been around. I mean, like, it's, you know, the music business has changed, and I think to get to the numbers that I'm at even is pretty remarkable, considering that how much real drums are being recorded on records. It's still happening, you know, and I'm very much staunchly, you know, there's a lot of people that will say, oh, there's no recording business anymore, it's over, you know, there's no sessions, but there are.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, and some people will say, yeah, there are for you, but they're not just for me. There are sessions going on. There are less. I will stick my hand in there. There definitely are less from even when I started.
Mm-hmm.
But if I compare myself to Gadd or someone like that, I mean, God knows, Steve, I bet he can't even figure out the number. I mean, it's insanity. You know?
I would agree with that. I'm not sure that he knows, you know, at this point.
He doesn't know. Yeah. I think I don't know what I'm on now, but I know what happens is you play on stuff and then you find out like a year later, oh no, that was #1. I found out a few days ago.
Right.
There's an album I did for a Colombian artist, and it was #1 in Colombia, Panama, and Venezuela, I think, at the same time, like last week. And so there are interesting things happening all over the world. It's not just the UK and America.
That's the amazing thing about being able to record from where you are and you know, send that to wherever it's needed. You know, that's amazing. I do love hearing something that you've played on and hearing your sound, because no matter what style you're playing or who you're playing with, you have a really distinct sound to your playing, just your personal style, and it comes through. And I think that's something that's pretty unique, you know. It's like Gadd. I mean, you hear Gadd playing on something and you know that it's Steve Gadd. And you know,
well, that's the greatest compliment you could ever give me, that really, to be honest with you. Thank you, because you
Absolutely.
try it. I think all musicians try. It's one thing being really fast, you know, it's one thing being really loud, etc. But it's very difficult to have as soon as you play that people go, oh yeah, it's that guy, you know.
Yeah.
And we all look at those musicians, and I still do, and I still want to be them, you know. I'm still very much the 10-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incredible that you feel that about my playing. Thanks. I'll take that one.
Absolutely, yes. And I know that a lot of people would agree with that too. So, absolutely. You know, I think that one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is kind of a combination of the few of the things we've just recently covered. Different styles, playing different styles, and then also your signature sound coming through on things. One of those things is an album that's going to be released fairly soon, right? That you did, that you played on with Bob Marley.
Yeah, that's a strange request to have that happen. So I did it actually. I recorded it about over a year ago. And this year was the 75th anniversary of Bob, and the Marley estate have been putting out a few things this year to celebrate his 75th, and this album was going to be part of it, and it was supposed to come out in the spring, and then it all went wobbly, as we know.
Right.
And as far as I'm aware, it's coming out this coming spring. So. Yeah, and it's a weird one. So what happened, you know, I enjoy reggae, and I enjoy the sounds, and I'm still experimenting trying to get the sounds right from that era. That, you know, it's a particularly cool sound that the snare drum makes and the kit makes. And an engineer saw me playing that style, and there was a record being made they were basically adding strings to some very famous Bob Marley tracks to create another record. And the arrangements were changing a little bit, and they wanted a bit more control over the drums, and they wanted somebody to replace the drums from the original records. And I'm like, no one can do that. No one should be allowed to do that, really. But it was a gig that was offered to me, and I took it as a challenge. And I don't know how people are going to feel about it when they hear the record. But yeah, basically, I played on some stuff with Bob and the Wailers. And there was a couple of tracks, but one particular that I'm sort of most proud of. There's a tune that didn't have drums originally. So they asked me if I could put some new drums to this Bob Marley tune, which didn't have kit ever. And I'm most proud of that, because it's like, okay, well, that's almost like a real session. I'm being asked to play a part on a track.
Yeah, to create a part. That's amazing. And I would love to point out that in the intro, that music that you hear, that is Ash Soan. So there you go.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I love those sounds, you know, and I'm still experimenting with that stuff. So now with the Wailers, the drummer that's with the Wailers now is the nephew of the original drummer.
Wow.
Yeah. Aston Barrett Jr., his name is. And Carlton Barrett was the drummer with the Wailers. And that's the drummer that I was listening to when I had to cop what he was playing on the Bob Marley stuff. And the sound, just the sound of it, the snare drum in particular, like, you know, there's nothing quite like it, really. If you listen to those Bob Marley tunes, again, instantly recognizable, that snare sound, I think. And Aston, he was really cool. You know, he basically told me which snare is the snare to use. And the one that Carlton used to use was a Ludwig Supraphonic. cranked to high heaven, you know, just like a timbali with some wires on it, you know. And then it's not just that. There's some stuff that they do with compression and and EQ that makes it sound a particular way that I'm still fascinated by that sound, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you first sent me that clip, I was like, this is just incredibly cool and so different from anything else that I've heard you play. So I loved it.
Yeah, I was very lucky. You know, one of the greatest things about London. So when I moved to London, I also met another bass player who really is responsible for sort of setting me on the right path for reggae. Is a bass player called Winston Blissett, and he plays with a band called Massive Attack, a British band, Massive Attack. So when in my early 20s, I was playing in a pub, and this guy came in and saw the band, and we got chatting, and we eventually started playing. And he's not from Jamaica, but I think he's from one of the islands. And he sat on my drums and showed me how to play reggae drums, and he explained the feel. So a bass player was playing the drums, showing me the feel, and I will thank him for this, you know, to this day, for sort of setting me on the right direction. It's down that way. That's where you go.
That's so incredibly important, and you know, I think that that all of us can really recognize the people that came before us and helped along the way, along the path. Yeah. And you know, there's so much knowledge gained over the years that to tap into that, to ask for advice or help whenever is needed is so important. And I kind of along those lines, I wanted to talk about the relationships that are developed in this industry, and especially among the drumming community. I feel like it's just there's something that connects everyone. It's not as competitive maybe as other instruments can get. There's this really serious community of drummers who care about each other. We actually have a photo of you with Stanton Moore and Steve Gadd. There you guys are. I think maybe I even took that picture. I remember
yeah.
Yeah. Right before the NAMM show. That's when that was taken in January, when we had no idea what was to come in 2020. So
absolutely clueless, weren't we?
We were just, you know, moving along like everything was normal. But I just think, you know, so Steve is one of your influences, you know, from over the years, and then meeting Stanton. And I was also there to witness the meeting of Ash Soan and Stanton Moore, which will go down in history. But, you know, just those connections that kind of carry all of us through and make this industry a most amazing place to be. It's so important.
Yeah. And I think part of the thing that you're talking about, I think, you know, so when you're playing the instrument, you know what that feels like. And if you lean towards a particular feel and style of music, and you play in a particular way, when you meet people that are like-minded. So when immediately when I met Stanton, it was just like, bam. And someone had said to me, it's going to be like that. A couple of people had said to me, when you meet Stanton, it's just going to be like brothers. And they were right. I mean, and I think what his personality, obviously, is a very open, giving bloke. You know, he's a fantastic ambassador for drums. But the way he plays is what really connects us, actually, because I get what he's doing. I don't understand completely what he's doing. I would love to know. And he's shown me a lot of that New Orleans stuff, and I'm learning from him. There's a back and forth, and, you know, he's talked to me about microphones, and I think that is reflective with a lot of guys in drums. I think there is competition, but I think it's healthy mainly.
Sure.
You know, but yeah, I think that sort of shared journey, that shared feeling that, you know, what that person is going through when they're playing like that.
Absolutely.
I think is what connects us. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. There's definitely a feeling of, wanting to be the best or wanting to be really great. And then there's also this community of support. Uh,
Yeah.
and one person needs something and other people come to their aid.
Yeah.
Is so fantastic. And just watching you and Stanton in particular, I'm just kind of thinking back. Talk drums and sound, work things out with brushes on a table. It's like
Yeah.
it's a really great thing to see and to witness. And how lucky are we to be in
I
this
know.
community?
How lucky, exactly. And also, we mustn't forget the drum industry as well. So you guys, that is also part of it. Because if it wasn't for the fact that Gretsch and Zildjian and all the companies that I work with, if the people that we work with, if they were all standoffish people, then that whole community there'd be a piece missing. But it's very much connected.
Absolutely, yeah. And I would say, at these events at PASIC and NAMM, it is like a giant family reunion in a way where you see all those people, you see the musicians, you see the people from the industry. There are just so many people that you can count among your friends and, the family that you choose to have as your family. So,
Yeah. And you get that moment like, oh yeah, we're working.
yes. Wait, this is a job. Wait a minute.
This is work. Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's the greatest thing ever with music, really, as well. For me, is that it never feels like work.
That is a great thing. I think that's something that, you look at your children, for example, and think about what they will be when they grow up, or, what they're into. And the hope is that they'll find something like
Yeah.
music feels to you, right? Where you're doing this is your livelihood, but it's also something that just makes you incredibly happy and that you love so much. So, yeah.
Well, like what you've said there is absolutely key, really, isn't it?
Mm.
Finding something. I'm very much like, there's music around. They've got instruments. My kids, they can come in here whenever they like. But I'm not pushing that on them to do that thing, But it's around, and I think if it's in them, then they've got the perfect place to develop it. But my son, he's really into anything with wheels, skateboards, scooters, BMX, downhill biking, the whole thing.
Extreme sports.
And now, I mean, the way the world is, you may as well, if you really love that and you get really good at it, you can probably earn as good a living at doing that, as long as you don't break too many bones, as anything else. Right. Why not?
Right. That is so true. Why not? Right.
Exactly. Get sponsored by Red Bull. Go for it.
Right. There you go. I love it. And what do you, what do your kids think about the fact that their dad is, do they have any kind of like concept of what you do and who your contacts are, kind of thing?
A little. But I don't think it's going to sink in until a few more years, when they're both sort of teenagers. I don't think. Like,
right.
When I was on TV, like for half the year, every Saturday night, and they never watched it. Yeah. And then all their friends would go, "Oh, there's Spike's dad." We saw him on TV Saturday night. They don't even bat an eye. Kids are
right. It's just a part of life, right?
It's pretty hard. Kids are just like, yeah, so what? It's quite interesting. And then very strange scenarios, which hopefully, for instance, I've been working with Julian Lennon for the last year, actually, and music is now starting to come out from some of the stuff that we've been working on.
Wow.
And Julian, and people will FaceTime me and often my daughters around. Like, I worked on a track a few weeks ago, and Bryan Adams, I was partly responsible for getting Bryan Adams involved in the track, because I've worked with him before, and he FaceTimed me, and as my daughter was there. And she saw him, and he's like, she's waving at him, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really mean anything. And then later on that day, I showed her a YouTube clip of him playing to 80,000 people. And she's like, oh, that's just, I'm like, yeah. But still, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just a bloke kind of on a screen. But maybe eventually she'll go, oh my God, I remember my dad FaceTiming Brian Adams.
Right.
Yeah,
maybe, I'm sure.
I don't know.
Be part of her history.
Same thing with Julian Lennon. You know, Julian, she was in the room when Julian was FaceTiming me and listening to the whole discussion about the record and things like that. And I don't know if it means anything or if it will eventually mean something to her. I don't know. You know?
That's amazing. I probably when their styles of music kind of like align with what you're playing and they get excited that you're, you know, recording with so-and-so.
Yeah.
And you know, it's interesting because most of the people I feel like in this industry are more down to earth than you would ever imagine. In fact, I remember, you know, you talking about your recording sessions with Adele, and you know, she's such a superstar. But you know, your conversations with her were so normal, right?
Well, she I don't know what she's like now. So when I worked with her, 19 was out, and this was obviously actually the last track to go on 21. And yeah, she's very much down to where she was, very down to earth. Funny, just amazing. You know, so but really into it, you know.
Right.
Because like there's an artist I can't mention really, but there's an artist I've done 5 albums with, a British artist, and I've never seen him at a session.
Wow. And
I played on one track for Adele and she was there.
That's amazing.
Well, it sort of says quite a lot.
Yeah, right. You know? Right.
Yeah.
Interested in the actual
process, the whole process of making your record. You know, it's interesting. You know, pop music, it can be bubblegum and thin at one end of the spectrum, but then absolute art, you know, as pure as any, you know, Van Gogh at the other end. And then there's everything in the middle. You know, and some of the artists that I get to work with, you know, there's some artists I can mention that it's not about the music. Far from it. It's about the fame. It's about the fashion. It's about the numbers. And that's what it's about. It's not about the chords and about the sentiment of the song and the lyric. And then there are other people that's all it's about is the lyric. And is this music gonna move someone? Is it credible? When I'm dead, is it gonna actually still be standing up?
Right.
Some people are like that, and then I mean that's what I love about. And to be honest with you, I quite like playing on the bubblegum stuff that's just nonsense because it's kind of easy and it's like it's quite a bit of fun. And ironically, that's the stuff my kids listen to. but you know, there's also the deeper thing that's great. And I you know, as musicians, it's fantastic to experience that whole spectrum, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, what are you doing right now besides, you know, you're doing these remote recordings? What do you have coming up you know, in 2021?
Well, there's an artist that I've done 3 albums for, and she is doing another one which I think we're going to start in January. And that'll be fully remote. She lives in Los Angeles. The producer's in London. So as far as I know, we're thumbs up. We're going to start that in January, which I'm looking forward to. I've got lots of little sessions going on all the time from all over the place. Like we mentioned earlier, I'm getting so many artists from like all over the world on different levels too that are contacting me to do stuff. So yeah, it's constant. I'm also working on at the moment I'm doing there's a company called Tune Track that do like sort of sample packs, and I've done one before, and I'm working on one from here, and that's quite a commitment, the time that takes to do. Right. So I'm doing that as well at the moment. Yeah, just endless stuff really. I'm getting a lot of pressure from people to do more drum orientated things like lessons and like master classes. I know Stanton's all over it.
Yeah.
So I'm slowly getting there with the technology and trying to figure it out how we can do that. So basically streaming, it's all very well streaming this. One microphone on a laptop and one camera. What's a lot harder is when you get a drum kit and trying to sync that up. Stanton's got it together, and there is a way of doing it. And maybe when I get that down, I might do.
When you have time, right, in between all these other things that you're involved with.
Yeah, Delamitri have a new record coming out, and we are recording another one at the moment too. That's going to be like a sort of B-sides record. So I'm doing that as well at the moment. I'm having done like 2 tracks out of the 10. So yeah, I've got lots of stuff all stacking up.
That's great. That's so great.
Yeah.
We're all really hoping that things open up, and once people are getting vaccinated and everything is improving over the next however many months, hopefully we'll all be back together.
Well, let's hope summer, I think the great hope here is that some of the festivals might start.
That would be amazing.
Like this year I was supposed to do Glastonbury again, and all of those fantastic things, and I was supposed to do a blues thing out in the Mediterranean, that and all of this stuff was cancelled, and it's like, but hopefully that stuff will be we will do Glastonbury next year rather, 2020. Right. Yeah, that's the hope.
It does seem like, a lot of people have said that after an experience like this, there's a renaissance. So hopefully, I know we're all hoping that is what happens. There's lots of live music. There's lots of events to attend.
Yeah. I think people are going to go nuts. I think they're just going to be so ready for music. It's going to be fantastic.
I agree. My fingers are crossed there.
Yeah. This is what I say to some of the young drummers that I talk to, is I know it's hard now. If you can just hang in there just a little bit longer, I think when the change comes, you're going to be, which gig do I take?
Right. There will be so many opportunities where, and it has to be very, very hard to be starting out right now. Kind of finding your path.
Yeah.
But, I think we've got some more months of, hunkering down. And one thing people might not know about you is that you have pigs. You're in your farm. I call it.
Yeah, only one pig now, sadly.
One pig.
We did have 15.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, when we had piglets. In fact, the mill here there was a tree over there, and just like lots of weeds and stuff growing in the middle. So I put the piglets in here the first summer that we had them.
Oh my gosh!
To clear all the nettles and stuff.
Rush, yeah.
But now we've just got one pig left, and for all the vegans out there, we sold a lot of the pigs. We didn't eat them all. The one that we've got left was the runt of the litter. Actually, she's about this big. She's definitely not that big now.
Wow, how big is she now?
Enormous. I mean, like, she's probably as big as the couch in the studio.
That's amazing.
Big.
That's amazing.
And she's called Nerd. Her name is named because my brother-in-law said to my wife, "Oh, you should name one of the pigs after me." So we did.
I love that. So you're busy. You have a lot of stuff to take care of.
So much going on. Yeah, totally. There's always something going on. And the animals, we've got chickens too, and blah blah blah. It's like, it's effort.
Yes, chickens are more effort, I think, than people realize. There.
Yeah.
And I also have chickens, and we are constantly, battling nature with the chickens because, everything wants to eat the chickens. So
yeah, everything wants to eat them. They want to eat everything that they're not allowed.
Yeah, that too. Yes.
They're not very bright in some respects. That's a challenge.
Yeah.
The pig, by the way, pigs are very bright. Like,
I've heard that.
oh my word, it's shocking actually.
That's
Like
amazing.
much more intelligent than dogs, I think. So an electric fence. Do you know that? You know what that is, right?
Mhm. Yes.
Right. So there's an electric fence that kept both of our pigs in.
Mhm.
And the mum of the one that we have left now, she figured out that if she turns the earth over at the bottom of where the wire and it touches the wire, that she hears it going into the ground.
Oh my gosh.
And she knows she won't get a belt on the other side.
That's amazing. Yeah, because it cycles around the fence, right? The current.
It would just go into the ground there, and she wouldn't get an electric shock, and she'd get out. So she figured it out. It's like, oh my god, it's like a Jurassic Park moment of like,
Right.
Clever girl. Unbelievable.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
In fact, I was talking to a friend of mine, and we're like, I'm not sure I could figure that out.
Right.
That's what he said. Anyway, yeah. So they are pretty bright, unlike chickens.
I love it. Yes, unlike chickens. Yeah. It's a battle. Oh, thank you so much, Ash. Thanks for being here today and sharing with us. And we'll look forward to seeing you in person soon enough.
I know. I hope so, Sarah. It seems like such a mad time when I last saw you in January, and here we are looking at another January imminently.
In a way that feels like about 10 years ago, to be honest.
I know, absolutely. Well, I definitely look a bit older than.
Oh, you look great. You have the quarantine beard happening there.
Exactly. I'm just like, whatever.
Great. Perfect. What better time than to grow a beard, right?
Exactly. When no one's looking except for the thousands that are watching this.
Oh my gosh. Well, I will see you on social media, and we will talk soon, I'm sure.
All right. Hang in there, everyone. And thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Take care.
Good luck.
Thank you for tuning in today. Join us each Tuesday for new episodes of Sarah Hagan Backstage.